You always hear these stories about Chinese kids who study 16 plus hours a day, Indian kids who study 10 plus hours a day, South Korean kids who study 14 plus hours a day. But do you really even need to study for that long? The short answer is no. And I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with the phrase that says, work smarter, not harder. But what does that actually mean when it comes to studying? In reality, there are two types of students. One of them studies for 10 plus hours a day using all sorts of techniques that he can think of, while the other one studies for only 2 hours a day using techniques that he knows works for him. At the end of the day, when they get their result back, they might end up scoring the same grade. But the difference is one of them studied for 8 hours longer than the other one. As students, it's so easy to get fixated on the amount of time that you spend studying as opposed to how effective your study session actually is. And understandably so, because time is something that you can measure very easily. For example, I'm sure whenever you talk to your friends, you said, "Oh bro, I studied like 6 hours last night." You won't say, "I studied so effectively last night." Time is just something that you can measure much more easily. However, this is where you mess up because the duration of your study can actually mask over the effectiveness of how you actually studied. So now that we've established that we don't need to study 10 plus hours a day to get good grades, all we need to do is study 2 hours or 3 hours but efficiently, and you will yield much better results while studying less but more efficiently. Now the aim of today's video is to understand how to make our study sessions much more effective and efficient. The first tip is the most important one, and that is to learn how to study. Now you might be a bit confused and you're probably asking, what do you mean how to study? Let me explain. Well, you see, there are different types of study techniques out there. Let me give you a few off the top of my head. You have active recall, spaced repetition, you have blurting, note-taking, and that's about all I can remember. But the point is, there are many different study techniques out there. Some of them are inefficient, some of them are extremely efficient. Now the whole point of this is that you recognize which one works for you, which one is the most efficient for you, and which one gets the better results for you. If you're going science-based, then there are a ton of research papers that have been published about which study techniques are better than others. My personal favorite one is one by Professor John Dunlosky, who is a psychologist at Kent State University in Ohio. And in his research paper, what he basically did is he compared all of the different study techniques. He did all sorts of experiments, tests, and all of that stuff just to determine which study technique is more efficient than the other. If you want to check his research paper out, feel free to do so in the description below. Now let me just briefly summarize it for you. Two of the best study techniques that are out there are active recall and spaced repetition. Active recall is basically testing yourself. Whenever you do past papers or practice questions, it forces you to recall any concepts that you've learned whenever you were learning the topic for the first time. In the long term, it's extremely efficient and probably one of the best techniques that you can use to get a good grade. I made a whole video about it a few months ago. You can go ahead and check it out over here. The next technique is spaced repetition, which is literally in the name. What this does is basically it keeps your memory fresh by combating the forgetting curve, which is a concept developed by Hermann Ebbinghaus. Basically, the longer you don't revise something is the quicker you forget. It's basically like an exponential curve going like this. I'll put a picture up on the screen right now. And yeah, so it helps you combat the forgetting curve and basically remember stuff in the long term. I made a video on it a few months ago as well, similarly to active recall. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can click over here and watch that right now. So what I would encourage you to do is try out all these different study techniques and see what works for you, because the way everyone studies is not the same. I study differently, you probably study differently, so it depends on really how you study. So try out all of these study techniques and see what works for you. Now with that being said, let's move on to the next point, which is limit yourself to one subject a day. Now again, you might be thinking, what is this guy waffling about? But hear me out. The way you study maths is not the same way that you study chemistry. They both are different subjects meant to be studied differently. Similarly, you'll have a different mindset when you're studying both of them as well. For example, when you're studying maths or physics, your mindset is more towards problem solving, as the questions that come from maths and physics are towards problem solving. But when you're studying a subject like chemistry, it's more towards understanding and memorization. There's different categories of subjects that I would put it into. For example, I would group maths and physics together because they both are a bit problem solving, whereas chemistry I would put in memorization. Now, I could study maths and physics on the same day, but if I try to study maths and chemistry on the same day, it'll just be weird and a bit messed up, because I'm going to be, there's going to be a transition from that mindset of problem solving to memorization, and it's just not the way you want it to be. So personally, what I would do is that I would keep one subject a day, or even if it's like a weekend or something, I would keep similar subjects on the same day. So for example, I wouldn't put maths and chemistry together, I would put maths and physics together. I hope that makes sense. This is also what worked for me when I was doing A-levels, because I used to come home from school at like 4, and I used to do like 1 to 2 hours maximum of studying from like 6 to 8 or like 5 to 7. And I only used to do one subject at a time. Unless it was a weekend, then I used to do multiple, but on like a weekday, only one subject. And that actually helped me a lot in the long term when it came to like, class tests or something like that. I could completely focus the day before on one single subject, and I actually started scoring decent marks in chemistry, which was quite rare for me. So yeah, personally, I just recommend that you stick to one subject a day, unless it's like a weekend or a holiday or whatever, you don't have to go to school. Then you can obviously make it 2-3 subjects a day. But what I would recommend is that if you're coming home from school and you're already tired, just do one subject, and not for like 3-4 hours. Just do it for 1 to 2 hours max. You need to make time for yourself as well. Now, the last and final tip that I have for you is so that you can, you're able to save time and make much better progress, and that is by creating a schedule. This is probably the most insignificant point out of the 3, but nevertheless, it is still important. You don't really notice it much, but when you don't have stuff planned beforehand, there's a bit of a mental process that you go through, which wastes a lot of your unnecessary time. It might seem a bit dumb, but these little gaps where you're thinking about what I should eat, what I should study next, what question I should do next, all of these take up unnecessary time out of your day. Even though they might be little, there's still something psychological that goes on in your brain, which makes you think, which wastes quite a bit of time. If you plan out all of these things the day before, your brain wouldn't have to think on the spot about what you should be doing next. Instead, all you'll have to do is go onto your Google Calendar and see what tasks you have upcoming, instead of making the small tiny decisions in your brain about what you should be doing next. So instead of wasting those small pockets of time, you can get started straight away. It also seems something like it's like psychological that you have to undergo that. Oh, what should I be doing next? Should I be doing this question? Should I be eating this? Should I be eating that? All of these small things, believe it or not, ever since I started creating a schedule, I don't have to think about these things, and it's just a bit of an automatic decision for me that, okay, I've finished this, now the next task is this. No decision, no, thinking about what should I do next, just straight onto the work. It's kind of weird, and you're probably thinking, what am I waffling about? But trust me, just create a schedule and try it out, and then you'll see how your productivity skyrockets. So, moral of the story, you absolutely do not need to study 10 plus hours a day. It is absolutely unnecessary, a big waste of time, and you're never going to be able to enjoy yourself. Studying can be fun, and that's your whole goal, that you should be making studying as fun as you possibly can, because of course discipline is nice, but you're only going to go back to something if it's fun. Because think about it, naturally you don't go to study, instead you force yourself to study. Whereas if you're playing video games, you willingly go and play video games. So because video games are fun, similarly, if you make studying fun for you, it's going to become easier to study. Because as I said, you can study 6 hours every single day versus 1 hour a day, and if you use that 1 hour correctly, it will yield much better results compared to that 6 hours of wasting your time essentially. So all you need to do is pick a correct study technique that suits you and will give you the proper results. Stick to it, be consistent, and trust me, you're gonna see your grades, your productivity, everything, your whole life skyrocket. So at the end, it's about how you study instead of how long you study. If you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. You can also like this video if you enjoyed it, and check out 2 of these videos if you enjoy my content. I'll see you with another video extremely soon. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.